Good day and welcome to another episode of What's Happening Today, presented to you by Rapido News Network. In our first story, we will discuss the possibility that President Biden will not run for the president in 2024. Next, we will talk about the fact that more than 15 Republicans are testing the waters for 2024 presidential run, even if former President Mr. Trump runs for the top post for the third time. Post that, we will discuss the opening up of Thailand for the visitors after about 2 years of pandemic restriction. And in our final story, we will talk about the Russian Ukrainian conflict. So let's get started. In our first story, we will discuss that midway through the 2022 primary season, many Democratic lawmakers and party officials are venting their frustration with President Biden's struggle to advance the bulk of his agenda, doubting his ability to rescue the party from a predicted midterm trouncing and increasingly viewing him as an anchor that should be cut loose in 2024. As the challenge facing the nation mount and fatigued base voters show low enthusiasm, Democrats in union meetings, the backroom of Capitol Hills, and party gatherings from coast to coast are quietly worrying about Mr. Biden's leadership, his age, and his capability to take the fight to former President Donald Trump for a second time. Interview with nearly 50 Democratic officials, from county leaders to members of Congress, as well as with disappointed voters who backed Mr. Biden in 2020, revealed a party alarmed about Republicans' rising strength and extraordinarily pessimistic about an immediate path forward. To say our country was on the right track would flagrantly depart from reality, said Steve Simeonidis, a Democratic National Committee member from Miami. Mr. Biden, he said, should announce his intent not to seek re-election in 2024 right after the midterms. Now in our next story, Mike Pence, Tom Cotton, Ron DeSantis are all dipping their toes into the race for the Republican Party's 2024 presidential nomination, according to a new report in the Washington Post. But they are not the only ones. With months to go before the midterm election, the shadow campaign for the 2024 Republican nomination is well underway, with at least 15 potential candidates traveling the country, drawing up plans, huddling with donors, or testing out messages at various levels of preparation. The quadrennial circus, described by more than 20 people with direct knowledge who spoke on the condition of anonymity to discuss private machination, has kicked into gear despite the public hint from Mr. Trump that he too plans to join a scrum a third time, says a report. Interviews with over a dozen of GOP operatives indicate that he is not clearing the field, and a range of candidates plan to take him on from different angles. Included in the list of prominent Republicans making the rounds through Iowa and New Hampshire are Tim Scott, Chris Christie, Mike Pompeo, Larry Hogan, Nikki Haley, Ted Cruz, Rick Scott, and would-be Trump nemesis Liz Cheney. Now in our next story, as the world is opening up after about 2 years of pandemic restrictions, Thailand now plans to end mandatory pre-travel registration for foreigners, rolling back the last of the pandemic-era curbs as the tourism-reliant nation bets on global visitors to power its economic recovery. The country's main COVID-19 task force is likely to consider a proposal to scrap the so-called Thailand Pass requirement at a meeting on June 17th. The country's tourist minister, Mr. Fiffet, told reporters on Thursday the move would go into effect next month and has the backing of the health ministry, he further added. Foreign nationals are currently required to upload details of vaccination and proof of medical insurance of at least $10,000 before departure to secure the Thailand Pass, which allows COVID-negative visitors a waiver of quarantine on arrival and free mobility in the country. The tourism minister will also propose restoration of visa on arrival for travelers for nearly all countries that were eligible before the pandemic, with the exception of some territories that are still battling the COVID-19 outbreak, Fiffet said. Earlier this month, Thailand allowed bars, pubs and karaoke clubs to reopen in some region, ending the shutdown of more than a year. This measure comes amid an easing of local COVID cases and the scramble among tourism-reliant countries to once again woo travelers. The beach party town of Phuket has already gotten away with the mask mandate on June 1st for most people, and Bangkok is expected to follow suit soon. Now, in our final story on the Russian Ukrainian conflict, even before the start of the war in Ukraine, an international alliance to rally the world against a Russian invasion came together so quickly that President Biden later marveled at how the purpose and unity found in months that would have once taken years to accomplish. Now, with the conflict in its fourth month, US officials are facing the disappointing reality that the powerful coalition of nations stretching from North America across Europe and into East Asia may not be enough to break the looming stalemate in Ukraine. With growing urgency, the Biden administration is trying to coax or cajole countries perceived by Washington as neutral in the conflict, including India, Brazil, Israel, and the Gulf Arab states to join the campaign of economic sanctions, military support, and diplomatic pressure to further isolate Russia and bring a decisive end to the war. So far, few, if any of them, have been willing. Despite their partnership with the United States on other major security matters, Mr. Biden is making an extraordinary diplomatic and political gamble this summer in planning to visit Saudi Arabia, which he had called a pariah on Thursday. He met with President Jair Bolsonaro of Brazil on the sideline of the Summit of the Americas in Los Angeles. Mr. Bolsonaro visited Moscow the week before Russia invaded Ukraine and declared solidarity with President Vladimir Putin. In Los Angeles, Mr. Bolsonaro preempted any push by Mr. Biden on Russia, saying that while Brazil remained open to helping end the war, given our reliance on certain foreign players, we have to be cautious. I have a country to manage, he said. US officials acknowledge the difficulties in trying to convince countries that they can balance their own interests with American and European drive to isolate Russia. That was all for the major news update for June 12th. Stay tuned for our next update on the ongoing world affairs. We hope that you find this video useful. If you like this video, hit that like button. And for a continued update on what's happening around the world, consider subscribing. And to get notified whenever we post a new video, hit that bell icon. If you have any comments or any suggestions for us, please let us know in the comment sections below. Thank you.